This video was brought to you by Brilliant. We've covered a lot of different elections on this channel, but never a Vatican one. The thought of an election in a theocratic absolute monarchy might be a bit strange, but as the microstate's leader, the Pope is in fact elected, albeit by a very limited group of voters. With Pope Francis, now 88, remaining in critical condition in hospital with double pneumonia and kidney complications, there is a natural interest in understanding what happens when his time does eventually come. So in this video, we're going to explain what happens when the Pope dies, how the election of a new Pope works, and who might be chosen to succeed Francis. Hey, do you kind of hate us? Well, watch us respond to your criticisms, from bias to advertising or pronunciations, in our dedicated criticism response video. It's linked in the description. Now, you probably don't need much of an explainer on who the Pope actually is. But in simple terms, the Pope is the sovereign, i.e. the leader of the Vatican city-state, and the head of the Catholic Church, although his official titles are a lot longer and more exciting. With a global Catholic population of more than 1.3 billion people, the Pope's influence extends worldwide, of religious, moral, and political guidance and leadership. Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, became Pope in 2013 following the resignation of the late Pope Benedict XVI. Coming from Argentina, Francis is the first ever Latin American Pope, and the first from outside Europe in nearly 1,300 years. So what happens when he passes away? Well, the death will first be confirmed by doctors, but also ceremonially by a Vatican official called the Camerlengo, who will call out the Pope's baptismal name 3 times. With no response from the deceased pontiff, he will be pronounced dead, and a public announcement will soon be made. To symbolise the end of his reign, the Pope's gold signet ring and seal will be broken, and the papal apartment will be locked, both things that would also happen if Francis were to resign. The death or resignation begins a period called sede vacante, Latin for the seat is vacant, which lasts only until a new pope is elected. The pope's death will then begin 9 days of mourning, known as novendialis. For the first few days after his death, the pope will lie in state in St. Peter's Basilica for the public to come and pay their respects. Then a funeral and burial will take place between 4 and 6 days after death. True to form, Francis has set out plans for his funeral rites to be simplified, opting to forego some of the traditional pageantry. For example, when lying in state, his body will be displayed in an open wooden coffin, rather than lying on an elevated structure known as a catafalque. Francis has also chosen to be buried in Rome's Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, which will make him the first pope in a century to be interred outside the Vatican. If Francis were to resign from the papacy, then obviously the funeral and mourning period would not take place, and the timeline for holding a papal election, known as a conclave, would probably be shortened. In the event of a death, however, the conclave usually begins 15 to 20 days after the Pope's death. So how does the conclave actually work? Well, unsurprisingly, it's not your typical election. The process is run by the Dean of the College of Cardinals, and those able to vote are cardinals under the age of 80 who are known as the cardinal electors. There is a limit of 120 cardinal electors who can take part in the conclave, though there are currently 138 of them, the vast majority, 110, appointed by Pope Francis. Now, there are no official candidates, and in fact any baptized Catholic male could be elected Pope. However, the last time that cardinals chose someone who wasn't one of their own was in 1378. Conclaves are a highly secretive process though. Cardinals are locked in the Sistine Chapel for voting, where they cast secret ballots, with a 2/3 majority required for someone to be elected Pope. One round is held on the first day of the conclave, and then 4 on each subsequent days, till a Pope is elected, with the cardinal electors staying in a Vatican residence throughout. For the entire process, the papal conclave is completely sealed off, and cardinals are denied access to the outside world. No news, telephones, computers, and the like. After each round, the ballots are burned in a stove, and coloured smoke is released from a chimney to inform those outside of the progress. Black smoke means no pope was elected, white smoke means we have a new pope. But the conclave takes as long as it needs to. The 2013 conclave was relatively speedy, lasting a little over 24 hours, with cardinals electing soon-to-be Pope Francis on the 5th ballot. But the longest ever conclave, back in the 13th century, lasted nearly 3 years. So, who might succeed Pope Francis? Well, as we said earlier, this is obviously not a normal election. The secrecy of the process, no candidates, campaigns, or polling makes it impossible to know who the new pope will be. However, that doesn't stop speculation, and Vatican watchers will come up with their own list of cardinals considered to be the most popable, unofficially known in Italian as the Papabili, a handful whom we'll look through now. But as a quick aside, as tempting as it is, the left-right spectrum is not a good fit for this context. Of course, a cardinal could have conservative-oriented views on abortion, homosexuality, and the role of women in the church, but that doesn't preclude them from having progressive-oriented views on things like the environment, immigration, economic justice, and so on. Plus, there are obviously theological and liturgical differences that transcend the political spectrum. Nevertheless, with that caveat aside, if cardinals want to succeed Francis with another pope from outside of Europe, one of the most commonly listed papabili they could choose is Filipino Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, who has sometimes been dubbed the Asian Francis for his relatively liberal credentials, similarity in tone and emphasis, and a penchant for simplicity over luxury. Another non-European papabili is Ghanaian Cardinal Peter Turkson, previously a key advisor to Pope Francis on climate change and social justice, who will be the first African pope in roughly 1,500 years. Cardinals may instead look to Europe, though, where one notable papabili is Hungarian Cardinal Peter Erdo, generally seen as a more conservative and traditionalist voice within the church. Or perhaps, after an unprecedented sequence of a Pole, a German, and an Argentinian, cardinals will return the papal throne to an Italian. Italian Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa has gained international prominence as the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, a particularly sensitive role in which he has visited Palestinian Christians in Gaza during the war and offered to take the place of Israeli hostages taken by Hamas on October 7, 2023. Another option could be the Vatican's number 2, Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin, sometimes described as a moderate who could serve as a compromise between factions. These are just a few of the names, so it's entirely possible that none of them will end up being the new pope, and sometimes winning names seemingly come out of nowhere. Ultimately, we won't know until the white smoke rises above the Vatican and a new pope has been announced. Now, the thing is, often in politics, we need to understand a wide variety of topics to truly grasp what's going on. And fortunately, our sponsor this week, Brilliant, can help us do just that, with thousands of lessons in maths, science, programming, and AI. And not only that, their interactive lessons teach you by doing, instead of just asking you to mindlessly memorize stuff. In turn, this helps to build your critical thinking skills and become a better thinker. For instance, Brilliant's newly updated maths courses help you to establish a strong foundation in algebra. It then helps you to build on this, teaching you how to conquer calculus, all while maintaining an emphasis on problem solving and reasoning. The thing I like most about this, though, is that their mathematical courses help you to develop your mathematical intuition and fluency, skills that you can use in the real world. As we've told you before, data skills are absolutely necessary for navigating the modern world, and Brilliant is the best way to get them. To try everything that Brilliant has to offer for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/TLDR, or click the link in the description. And by doing so, you'll get 20% off an annual premium subscription.